Scottie Scheffler just called a reporter's question terrible, next question awful at the Masters. And that was not the first time this year. It was the fourth. The world's most composed player has a press conference problem, and Golf Digest noticed it before anyone else did. This is not about one bad mood after one round. Golf Digest documented 5 separate press conference friction incidents from Scheffler in 14 months. At the Players, at the Masters, at the Hero World Challenge, at the Cadillac Championship. 5 incidents, 1 player, a documented pattern that nobody has traced back to where it started.
Honestly, I think the press conference version of Scheffler that is emerging in 2026 tells you something real about what it costs to be the best player in the world, and the Bryson question he ducked at the Cadillac Championship is the one that connects all of it. Do you think Scheffler's press conference friction is justified, or is the world's best player starting to lose patience with the media in a way that will eventually cost him? Drop it in the comments right now. And stay with me, because the sequence that connects the Bryson question to the Masters' terrible question moment to the Players' snub in 2025 is a timeline nobody has assembled correctly, and I'm not getting to it until we're well into this video.
To understand what is actually happening in these press conferences, you need to understand who Scottie Scheffler was in press rooms 2 years ago. In 2024, Scheffler was the most patient interview in professional golf. He sat at the podium after 67s and after 74s with equal composure. He answered the same questions he had answered at the previous tournament. He gave reporters time. When questions were wide of the mark, he answered the version of the question that was closer to the mark without making anyone feel bad about it. Golf Digest's coverage of the 2024 tour season described his press availability as almost frustratingly calm. A reporter who was boring to interview because he never gave.
That changed. It did not change all at once. It changed in 5 increments across 14 months, each one slightly sharper than the last, each one touching a different category of question, each one revealing something about where his patience has been wearing thin. Here is the number that gives this pattern its context. Scheffler had 20 tour wins going into the 2026 season. He has led the world rankings for 3 consecutive years. He has been the most asked about player in professional golf press rooms since the 2022 Masters. That is approximately 250 to 300 post-round press availabilities where reporters have been asking him to explain his own dominance, assess his competition, or weigh in on the political drama surrounding the tour.
250 to 300 times. Same podium, different reporters, often the same questions. None of that explains what the Bryson question at the Cadillac Championship actually was and why his answer there connects directly to what happened at the Masters 6 weeks later. That's coming. Let's go through these in order, because the sequence matters. Scheffler is asked a question after his first round. He considered it so far outside the realm of reasonable inquiry that his response was 3 words. Next question. That's ridiculous.
That is the first documented flash of what Golf Digest would later call his salty side. You follow this tour. You have seen players get annoyed in press rooms before. You have seen Tiger snap. You have seen Rory's jaw tighten. But Scheffler, the guy who cried on the phone with his wife before accepting the Masters trophy, the guy who says faith and family come before golf, shutting down a reporter with "that's ridiculous" is a data point. It registered. And then it happened again. March 2025. The Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass. A reporter asked Scheffler whether he was surprised the course had not firmed up more despite days of sunshine. The reporter described it as a seemingly innocent question, casual conversation about course conditions.
Scheffler's response, "I'm not going to bite on that storyline." The reporter later documented the exchange publicly. He wrote that Scheffler apparently thought he was trying to get a quote about soft greens for a negative course condition story. The reporter noted, with some visible frustration, that he was just making conversation. Soft greens at TPC Sawgrass is not a conspiracy theory, it is weather. But that exchange told you something. Scheffler was beginning to read intent into questions where none existed. He was starting to hear angles in straightforward inquiries. That is not a player who is comfortable at the podium. That is a player who has decided the press room is a room where people are trying to get something from him. April 2026, the Masters, Round 3. He shoots 65 on Saturday, one of the best rounds of the week. He finishes 7 under overall, 4 shots back of McIlroy and Cameron Young. By every measure, it is a great day.
Then Jason Sobel of SiriusXM and CBS Sports asks what the round could have or should have been. Scheffler, that's just a terrible question. Next question, awful. Then he laughed, and later, according to Golf Channel, he apologized and said the question wasn't that bad. Here is the question that moment raises. If he apologized because he agreed the question was fine, what was the original reaction responding to? Not the question, something else. Something that was already in the room before Sobel opened his mouth. Is Scheffler's press conference friction a sign of someone under unsustainable pressure? Or is he right that some golf media questions are genuinely lazy?
And all of that, the hero world ridiculous, the player's storyline snub, the Masters terrible sad inside. LIV Golf's funding crisis is real and documented. PIF released a statement confirming the current season's funding would not be renewed at the same level. LIV postponed its Louisiana event in June 2026. There are credible reported speculations that Bryson DeChambeau, who left the PGA Tour for LIV, may not re-sign with the league. PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolap and DP World Tour CEO Guy Kinnings have both publicly stated openness to returning LIV players. The pathway conversation is live. The question reporters have been asking elite PGA Tour players is, should LIV players be allowed back, and on what terms? Scheffler had answered this question multiple times with genuine directness. In 2024, at the WM Phoenix Open on Golf Channel, he said, "Everybody made their own decision, and I have no bad blood toward the guys that left. But a path back, I think, wouldn't be a very popular decision. I think if they just came back like nothing ever happened." In 2025, before the Masters, he said, "I definitely miss the competition. They've got some pretty good players on their tour. I wish some of those guys had stayed. But at the end of the day, they made their choice."
Both of those answers were substantive. Real positions, real opinions, documented. Put yourself in the press room at the Cadillac Championship in 2026. LIV's funding crisis has just become public. Bryson's future is genuinely uncertain. You are a reporter, and you ask Scheffler the natural follow-up to his own previous positions. Given everything that is happening with LIV right now, what do you think about where this goes? Scheffler gave a brief, deflecting non-answer. Essentially, Sports described it as noticeably quieter compared to his previous responses on the same topic. Their analysis, silence might be the safest response. Something changed between the 2025 Masters press conference and the 2026 Cadillac Championship. The question was the same category. The Scheffler who answered it was different.
Here's the question that silence raises. Did Scheffler stop sharing his real opinion on the Bryson return situation because the situation changed, or because he was told to stop sharing it? The tour is actively managing the LIV return narrative right now. CEO Brian Rolap is doing public interviews about pathways. The last thing Monahan's office needs is the face of the PGA Tour saying something on camera that complicates those negotiations. A path towards coming back wouldn't be very popular, quote from 2024, is one thing when LIV is financially healthy. That same quote in 2026, when LIV is collapsing and return talks are happening at the executive level, is a different kind of problem. Now here's the part nobody has connected. At the 2025 Ryder Cup, Bryson DeChambeau was still a LIV player. He was not eligible for the U.S. team because of his LIV status. The Ryder Cup conversation that week was partly about DeChambeau being left out of a team where he had won multiple points in previous cups. In that environment, where Bryson was being publicly attacked by Rory McIlroy and Brandel Chamblee, Scheffler defended him, on record, at a Ryder Cup press conference. He called DeChambeau a great guy and good friend. Scheffler said good friend about a player who is not on his tour, about a player whose absence he had previously said was their own choice. The friendship is real, documented, stated publicly by Scheffler himself, and that friendship is exactly why the Cadillac Championship question about Bryson's return became the moment Scheffler went quiet. You do not want to answer a politically loaded question about your friend's professional future when your employer is actively negotiating the terms of that future in backrooms you are not invited to. So he said nothing and called a different question ridiculous 6 weeks before.
He said it was a foot and a half shorter than the previous year, with the face wide open. He had, in other words, been one of the voices in the media environment that Scheffler was visibly irritated by. But in coverage of Scheffler's press conference pattern, Chamblee's position on the salty side was more nuanced than his swing analysis. Golf Digest's reporting noted that Chamblee understood the pressure dynamic. The argument, when you are the best player in the world, and every week someone finds a new angle to question whether you are declining, the press room becomes a place where you are constantly asked to either defend yourself or explain your own greatness. Neither task is comfortable for someone who describes himself as a faith-driven husband and father who ranks golf third.
But here is why Chamblee's empathy does not resolve the problem. The same Golf Digest piece that traced Scheffler's salty side noted that several of his friction moments were not in response to aggressive or personal questions. They were in response to routine questions about course conditions, equipment changes, and match play hypotheticals. The pattern is not a player defending himself against unfair scrutiny. It is a player finding things to be annoyed about in ordinary conversations. That is a different problem, and it is the problem the tour should be paying attention to. Is Scheffler's press conference friction understandable given his position, or is this the beginning of a relationship with the media that could genuinely damage his public image? Comment, totally understandable or early warning sign.
The Masters apology is the data point that matters most here. After calling Jason Sobel's question, terrible, next question, awful, Scheffler came back, according to Golf Channel, and said the question wasn't that bad. He knew it was a reasonable question. He reacted anyway, and then he corrected himself. That sequence, overreaction, self-awareness, course correction, is not the behavior of a player who is losing grip on his composure. It is the behavior of a player under a specific kind of pressure that has a specific location. The press room is where that pressure lives.
The 2026 PGA Championship at Aronimink is the current backdrop for all of this. Scheffler is in the field, the LIV return conversations are ongoing, DeChambeau's future is publicly uncertain. Every press room Scheffler enters for the rest of 2026 carries the same category of question that triggered the Cadillac silence. Here is the counterintuitive number. In 2024, the year before any of these press conference friction incidents were documented, Scheffler had his most dominant statistical season in history. He led 28 PGA Tour categories. He won 7 times. His scoring average was 67.99. The year where he was described as almost frustratingly calm in press rooms was also his best year on the course. The year the press room friction started escalating, 2026, opened with Chambly publicly questioning his swing. He missed the top 10 at Riviera and Bay Hill. He opened the players with
The most relevant historical comparison is not another golfer. It is Tiger Woods between 2009 and 2011, when the press room became a minefield rather than a podium. Tiger had spent 15 years giving the media what it needed. Then the off-course story broke, and every question became loaded with an angle. He withdrew from press rooms. He gave shorter answers. He occasionally snapped. The reasons were completely different from Scheffler's, but the behavior pattern, a historically patient press performer who starts reading intent in ordinary questions, has a template. What triggered it for Tiger was personal crisis. What appears to be triggering it for Scheffler is something more compressed, the intersection of form questions, live political questions about his friend, and the weight of being asked to explain himself 250 times a year.
Here's the pattern this situation points to about how the PGA Tour manages its relationship between its best players and the media infrastructure around them. The tour needs press room access. Media relationships are how the product gets covered. Every beat reporter who gets a real answer from Scheffler writes a story. Every story builds the product's visibility. The tour's broadcast partners, its sponsors, and its streaming deals all depend on players engaging authentically with the media. Scheffler has been the most valuable media asset in professional golf for 3 years. His press room availability, his genuine answers, his faith-based composure, all of it made him a rare thing, an elite athlete who the media actually liked covering.
Here is the question the tour needs to answer. At what point does the volume of press room obligation on the world's #1 player, 250 to 300 post-round availabilities over 3 years, every significant political golf question directed at him, instead of the thoughtful, composed answers Scheffler gave in 2024, who is responsible for managing that? The tour does not have an answer for that. Nobody does. The deeper indictment is specific. The PGA Tour benefits enormously from Scheffler's press room credibility. His 2024 answers about LIV, a path towards coming back wouldn't be very popular if they just came back like nothing ever happened, shaped the public conversation around Tour LIV negotiations in ways that no official statement from Monahan's office could. A real player with a real opinion matters more than a press release.
But in 2026, when those same negotiations have become diplomatically sensitive, the same player who gave the tour its most useful public position on the issue is now going quiet on it. At the Cadillac Championship, he deflected. At the Masters, he was snapping at normal questions. The tour got 3 years of Scheffler's authentic press room presence. It is now navigating what happens when that authenticity starts developing edges, and it does not appear to have a plan for it. Does the PGA Tour need to actively protect Scheffler from press room overexposure, or is this just an elite athlete learning to set limits?
Here is where this lands. Scottie Scheffler called a question terrible, next question awful at the Masters. He said that's ridiculous at the Hero World Challenge. He refused to bite on a storyline at the Players.
He went quiet on Bryson at the Cadillac Champion. None of them connected the thread from the Bryson friendship, publicly stated at the 2025 Ryder Cup, to the Cadillac deflection to the general press room edge.
The connection is this. Scheffler is a man who has a real friendship with a player in a politically complicated situation, who has been asked about that situation roughly 30 times in 2 years, who is now being asked at a moment when his employer is actively negotiating that player's future behind closed doors. That silence at the Cadillac Championship was not rudeness. It was the most politically aware thing Scheffler has done in a press room since he started doing press rooms. The PGA Championship at Aronimink is happening now. The elevation is ongoing. Every press availability this summer carries the same question in a different form. Watch what Scheffler does the next time someone asks about Bryson directly. If he deflects again, that is a coordinated position. If he answers, it is news. Subscribe and you will see it covered the day it happens. That is the press room moment this whole summer is building toward.